History is not solely the domain of kings and queens, of grand pronouncements and royal decrees. It is forged in the crucible of ordinary people, individuals who find themselves pushed to extraordinary limits, their mettle tested in the fires of adversity. William Wallace was such a man, a knight, yes, but one not born to a throne, not cradled in royal privilege, but rather firmly rooted in the Scottish soil, a son of the land itself. In the waning years of the 13th century, Scotland found itself in a precarious position, leaderless and vulnerable, its throne empty, a gaping void at the heart of the nation. And King Edward I of England, a monarch of ambition and ruthless resolve, saw this as his golden opportunity, seizing his chance to impose his iron will upon a proud and fiercely independent people. Where the Scottish nobility, mired in their own internal conflicts and political maneuvering, hesitated to act, Wallace, driven by a burning sense of injustice, rose to the challenge. His rebellion was not born of personal ambition, not fueled by a thirst for power or glory, but rather it was a raw and visceral response to the outrage he felt at the oppression of his people. Sparked, as legend so poignantly tells us, by the brutal and senseless murder of his beloved wife, a crime perpetrated by the heavy hand of an English sheriff. He rallied the downtrodden farmers, those who toiled the land and knew the sting of English rule, the skilled blacksmiths, who could forge not only tools but also weapons of resistance, and the shrewd merchants, who understood the economic shackles imposed upon Scotland, all united by a shared and fervent dream of a free and independent Scotland. Wallace's true genius lay in his masterful command of guerrilla warfare, a style of fighting perfectly suited to the Scottish landscape, using Scotland's wild and unforgiving terrain, its rugged mountains and dense forests, to his advantage, ambushing and outmaneuvering the heavily armored English forces. His greatest and most celebrated triumph came at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in the year 1297. Where he and Andrew Moray, a fellow Scottish patriot, skillfully lured a significantly larger English force, confident in their superior numbers and weaponry, into a carefully orchestrated and deadly trap, turning their arrogance against them. This stunning victory sent shockwaves through England, shattering their aura of invincibility, and simultaneously inspiring a renewed sense of hope and defiance throughout Scotland. For a brief but glorious moment in history, William Wallace was appointed Guardian of Scotland, a title bestowed upon him as a symbol of the people's trust and admiration, the living embodiment of the Scottish spirit of resistance, a beacon of hope in a dark and oppressive time. But King Edward's thirst for vengeance was insatiable, and his response was swift and merciless. At the Battle of Falkirk, the devastating volleys of English longbowmen, a weapon of unparalleled accuracy and power, shattered the ranks of the Scottish lines, forcing Wallace to resign his guardianship and retreat into the shadows, becoming a fugitive in his own land. Hunted relentlessly and ultimately betrayed by those he once trusted, William Wallace became a legend whispered in the shadows, his name synonymous with courage and sacrifice, a potent symbol of defiance against overwhelming odds, even as his physical army was scattered and broken. Though his immediate cause seemed lost, crushed beneath the weight of English power, his unwavering will and indomitable spirit endured, etched into the very fabric of the nation. Wallace's fight transcended mere territorial disputes. It was not simply a struggle for land and resources, but a profound and deeply personal battle for the very soul of a nation, for its right to self-determination and freedom from oppression. The spark of rebellion he so bravely lit would, in time, ignite a raging fire, a fire of national pride and unwavering resolve that could not, and ultimately would not, be extinguished, paving the way for future generations to continue the fight for Scottish independence. William Wallace's end came not in battle, but through betrayal. On August 3, 1305, hiding near Glasgow, Wallace was captured by men led by Sir John de Menteith, a fellow Scot who had once fought beside him, now loyal to Edward. Lured by English rewards, Menteith led soldiers to Wallace's cottage under cover of darkness. Wallace, asleep and unguarded, was seized without a fight, bound in chains. For Edward, this was a victory won not by force, but by exploiting Scottish divisions. Scotland reeled at the news, its greatest hope for freedom now a captive. The betrayal by one of their own deepened the wound, turning Wallace's capture into a national tragedy. As he was dragged away, a chapter closed. But the injustice would echo for centuries. The legend of Wallace would only grow in the shadow of this treachery. Wallace's journey from Roybroyston, where he was betrayed, to London, was a carefully orchestrated spectacle of humiliation, designed to crush his spirit and deter any future rebellion. Paraded through English towns, each stop a new stage for his torment, he was displayed as a trophy, a symbol of English dominance and Scottish subjugation. Bound in heavy chains, jeered at by the masses, and systematically denied all dignity, stripped bare of any semblance of respect. The English crowds, their minds poisoned by years of relentless propaganda, eagerly awaited his arrival in each town, came to see the infamous rebel brought low, their hatred fueled by fear and misinformation. The procession was deliberately slow and agonizingly public, a calculated move to maximize the humiliation. Each day a new ordeal of taunts, discomfort, and psychological torment meant to break his spirit, crush his resolve, and serve as a stark warning to any other Scots who dared to dream of freedom. Yet Wallace endured the relentless taunts and the calculated abuse in stoic silence, his inner strength a shield against their malice, refusing to show despair, denying them the satisfaction of witnessing his defeat. For Edward, this was far more than a simple act of punishment. It was a carefully crafted message, a brutal lesson etched in blood and humiliation. Rebellion would be swiftly and mercilessly crushed, its flames extinguished with extreme force, and its leaders publicly shamed, their names forever tarnished as a warning to others. On August 22, 1305, Wallace finally arrived in London, the culmination of his agonizing journey, the city buzzing with a morbid anticipation, eager to witness the final act of this grim drama. He was held overnight in the Tower, awaiting a preordained trial, a mere formality whose outcome was already irrevocably decided. The long and brutal journey had reached its end, but the final gruesome act, his public destruction and dismemberment, was about to begin with the break of dawn. London was primed and ready for its macabre show, a spectacle of power and retribution. Wallace's suffering was not merely a personal tragedy, it was a carefully staged piece of political theater designed to send a chilling message. The world, and especially Scotland, would soon witness the ultimate price of defiance against the iron fist of Edward Longshanks. The trial of William Wallace at Westminster Hall was nothing more than a preordained charade, a dark stain on the concept of justice. The Grand Hall, usually a place of law, became a stage for political theater. It was justice in name only, a cruel mockery of due process. The outcome was decided long before Wallace ever set foot in the courtroom. He stood alone, facing a panel of English judges, men who were inherently biased against him. Their minds were already made up. He was accused of the highest crime, treason against the English crown. He was also accused of murder, for the lives lost in the battles he fought for Scotland's freedom. And, in a final act of condemnation, he was accused of sacrilege, a charge designed to further demonize him in the eyes of the public. Denied legal counsel, stripped of a voice to defend himself adequately, Wallace was left to face his accusers alone. Wallace was forced to listen as his actions, his very deeds of patriotism, were twisted and contorted into heinous crimes against the crown. When finally given the chance to respond to the charge of treason, he spoke with unwavering conviction. "I could not be a traitor to Edward, for I have never sworn allegiance to him. For I was never his subject, nor did I ever recognize his claim to our lands." In that defiant moment, he declared the very heart of the conflict that fueled the wars between Scotland and England. He spoke for Scotland's inherent right to self-rule, to determine its own destiny free from English domination. But the court, deaf to his pleas and blind to the truth, coldly ignored his impassioned defense. The verdict, a foregone conclusion, was predetermined long before the trial even began. He was found guilty on all counts, a sentence sealed by political expediency rather than any semblance of justice. The sentence handed down was brutal, a testament to the vengeful nature of the English crown. It was death by hanging, a public spectacle designed to instill fear, followed by drawing and quartering, a barbaric act intended to desecrate his body and erase his memory. This was not justice being served, but rather a calculated act of political retribution. It was a stark warning to all who might dare to resist English rule, a message written in blood and displayed for all to see. William Wallace's fate was irrevocably sealed, his destiny now intertwined with the brutal machinery of English oppression. His trial, a mere formality in the grand scheme of English dominance, served only to legitimize a preordained act of vengeance. The machinery of vengeance, fueled by fear and a thirst for control, was relentlessly set in motion, grinding towards its inevitable conclusion. The man who had so boldly defied a king, challenging his authority and threatening his dominion, would now be utterly destroyed by that very same king. The stage was meticulously set for a public spectacle of unimaginable cruelty, a grim testament to the lengths to which the English crown would go to maintain its power. Wallace's execution was a public ritual of humiliation. Stripped and crowned with thorns, he was tied to a wooden hurdle and dragged through London's crowded streets. The route was chosen for maximum exposure. Every jolt and jeer a reminder of his defeat. The mob hurled abuse and filth, seeing not a patriot but a villain. Wallace endured in silence, his dignity unbroken despite the agony. This procession was designed to strip him of humanity before the final act. By the time he reached Smithfield, he was battered and exhausted, a living warning to all. The crowd's bloodlust was at its peak. The execution would be the ultimate spectacle. Wallace's suffering was far from over. At Smithfield, a vast crowd gathered for Wallace's execution. He was hanged, but cut down before death, prolonging his agony. Still conscious, he was pinned to the scaffold as the executioner began the grisly work. Wallace was emasculated and disemboweled, his organs burned before his eyes. The crowd watched, both horrified and enthralled, as the state's vengeance was enacted. This was not just an execution, but a ritual of destruction, meant to erase the man and terrify the nation. Wallace's suffering was a message defiance would be met with unspeakable cruelty. Yet even in agony, he became a symbol of resistance. The spectacle was meant to break Scotland's spirit. Instead, it forged a martyr. The final act was beheading and quartering. Wallace's head was severed, ending his torment, but not the punishment. His body was divided into 4 parts, each sent to a different corner of the kingdom. His head, tarred and spiked, was displayed on London Bridge, a warning to all. The quarters were sent to Newcastle, Berwick, Perth, and Stirling, sites of his battles and victories. Edward intended this as a final gruesome lesson. Rebellion would be obliterated even in death. The remains were not buried, but exhibited as trophies of royal power. The message was clear. This is the fate of Scotland's heroes. But the attempt to erase Wallace's legacy would fail. His memory could not be quartered. The symbol of freedom endured. Edward's execution of Wallace was meant to end the Scottish cause. The brutality was a calculated warning. Treason would be met with annihilation. By branding Wallace a traitor, Edward tried to rewrite the war as a crime, not a struggle for freedom. The public spectacle, the scattered remains were psychological warfare. But the horror backfired. Scotland's rage grew, not its fear. Wallace's death became a rallying cry, his suffering a symbol of sacrifice. Edward tried to destroy the man but created a martyr. The legend of Wallace only grew stronger. Wallace's death did not end the fight, it inspired it. Robert the Bruce, moved by Wallace's sacrifice, became Scotland's new leader. Within months, Bruce was crowned King of Scots, rallying the nation. Wallace's memory fueled the rebellion, uniting Scots against English rule. 9 years later, Bruce led Scotland to victory at Bannockburn, securing independence. Wallace's legacy was the fire that kept hope alive. He became more than a man. He became an idea. His story, immortalized in legend and film, speaks to the universal desire for freedom. The English destroyed his body, but not his spirit. The flame he lit at Stirling Bridge still burns. Braveheart endures, wherever people fight for liberty.